Hello and welcome to the course Landscaping. Today's topic is landscaping in places of historical importance, in which we will discuss about making outdoor spaces around historical places to look beautiful and meaningful. Let's start with the basic about landscaping in places of historical importance. It is simply involves the intentional design, planning, and maintenance of the outdoor spaces surrounding historically important sites. The landscaping process involves various elements such as site's historical context, architectural features, natural surroundings, and the need for conservation. The goal is to enhance and complement the historical and cultural value of the site while providing an aesthetically pleasing and functional environment for visitors. However, landscaping at places of historical importance is a multidisciplinary effort which involves collaboration between historians, landscape architects, conservationists, and community stakeholders. It is basically about enhancing beauty without overshadowing the monument, and the best way to do this is possibly laying vast stretches of lawns around the monuments and planting some shade and flowering trees for beauty and to create places for rest. The places of historic importance includes the tomb, forts, and the historic monuments. An example of a beautiful landscaping, the Patio de los Naranjos, which means courtyard of the orange trees, is a historical landscape and it is located within the Great Mosque of Cordoba in Cordoba, Spain. This courtyard dates back to the 8th century and was part of the original mosque design during the Islamic rule of Al-Andalus. The courtyard features rows of orange trees, fountains, and a central ablution fountain. But the most important thing about this is, over the centuries, the Great Mosque of Cordoba underwent changes, including the construction of a cathedral within its structure after the Christian Reconquista. The courtyard remains a testament of the complex history and a cultural synthesis of different periods in Spain. Before discussing about the landscaping of important historical places such as tombs and forts, let's get an idea about the key aspects involved in landscaping of places of historical importance. So let's start with the preservation of historical features. Historical features such as gardens, pathways, statues, and other landscape elements that contribute to the site's historical significance should be identified and preserved, and to achieve this task, following points should be taken into the consideration. The first step in preserving historical landscape is to identify and assess their values, features, and conditions. This can be done by conducting historical research, field surveys, interviews, and mapping. The goal is to understand the history, character, and context of the landscape and to document its physical, cultural, and ecological attributes. This information can help you determine the significance, integrity, and vulnerability of the landscape and to identify the threats and opportunities for its preservation. The second step in preserving historical landscapes is to plan and design interventions that respect and enhance their values and features. This can be done by developing a preservation plan, a master plan, or a design proposal depending on the scope and scale of the project. The plan or design should be based on the principles and standards of landscape preservation, such as the Secretary of the Interior Standard for the Treatment of Historic Properties or the ICOMOS IFLA principles. Concerning rural landscapes as heritage, the plan or design should also consider the needs and preference of the stakeholders, the legal and regulatory framework, and the available resources and funding. The third step in preserving historical landscape is to implement and manage the intervention that were planned and designed. This can be done by applying appropriate techniques and methods for restoring, rehabilitating, reconstructing, or adopting the landscape elements. The implementation and management should also involve monitoring and evaluation to ensure that the preservation goals are met and that the landscape performance is maintained or improved. The implementation and management should also foster public awareness, education, and participation to increase the support and appreciation for the historical landscape. The fourth step in preserving historical landscape is to be document and interpret their values and features for the public and future generations. This can be done by creating and maintaining records, archives, databases, maps, photographs, and other forms of documentation. The documentation should provide accurate and reliable information about the history, character, and condition of the landscape and the changes and interventions that have occurred over time. The documentation should also be accessible and updated regularly. The interpretation should also use various media and formats such as signs, plaques, brochures, websites, apps, tours, and events. The fifth step in preserving historical landscapes is to collaborate and educate with other professionals, organizations, and communities that are involved in the landscape. This can be done by establishing and maintaining network partnerships for better results. It should be ensured that the collaboration and advocacy should also promote and support the best practices and standards of landscape preservation. The collaboration and advocacy should also communicate and demonstrate the benefits and challenges of preserving historical landscape and the ways to address them. The sixth and final step in preserving historical landscape is to adopt and innovate to the changing conditions and demands of the landscape. This can be done by embracing and responding to the dynamic and evolving nature of the landscape and the opportunities and challenges that it presents. The adaptation and innovation should also balance the respect for the past and the vision for the future, and the conservation and transformation of the landscape. It should also incorporate new technologies, approaches, and solution and management of the historical landscape. The second step involves the period appropriate design. It is the intentional effort to create outdoor spaces that align with the historical period of a site. This approach involves careful consideration of architectural styles, plant selections, and layouts that are authentic to the specific era in which the site holds historical significance. The architectural styles involve the use of prevalent architectural elements from a particular historical period. In this way, it helps to recreate the atmosphere of the time. Just for example, if the site is from the Victorian era, it must include ornate details and ironwork that features characteristics typical of Victorian architecture. The next is about the plant choices. The plants that were commonly found during the historical era should be selected, which also contributes to the authenticity of the landscape. This could involve using native plants, traditional garden varieties or species that were popular during that period. Overall, the goal is to evoke the same visual and sensory experience that people from that time might have had. The next is the layouts. The overall layout of the outdoor space should mirror the design principle of the historical period. This includes the arrangement of pathways, seating areas, and focal points. For example, a garden layout from the Renaissance period might involve geometric patterns, symmetrical arrangements, and formal structures. By paying attention to these details and aligning the design with the historical context, period appropriate landscaping aims to transport visitors back in time. Landscaping of places of historical importance often emphasizes the use of native plants and material to enhance the authenticity and preservation of the site. The third one is the native plants and materials. When designing the landscape, use plants and materials that were there during the old times. Pick plants that naturally belongs to the area as they can handle the local weather and soil, keeping everything in balance. This not only makes the place look like it used to, but also helps the environment. Moreover, by choosing plants that were around in the past, you not only make things historically accurate, but also connect the landscaping to the site's history. This way, visitors can learn about how people in the past used these plants and materials, teaching them more about the site history and nature. So, overall, we can say that landscaping with native plants and materials in places of historical importance serves multiple purposes such as preservation of historical accuracy, ecological conservation, sustainability, and educational enrichment. So, here we are just going to end today's lecture. Thank you.